Hi, I'm Dave Merlino.
I'm Dustin Sweet, and this is the Know Their Story podcast. We talk to veterans about their time in service, returning home from war, and transitioning out of the military. Hopefully, along the way, we'll inspire you to do the same with a veteran in your life.
Because sometimes all it takes to make the world a better place is sitting down with a friend to know their story. Okay, welcome back to episode 17 of the Know Their Story podcast. Usually I would banter with Dustin right now, but he is having a hard time telling time today. So he will jump on when he jumps on and when I decide to admit him to the conversation. But joining us today, we are going back to our roots, all the way back to our roots, not only to the Vietnam War, but to Apache Troop, the troop nearest and dearest to our heart, who we started this documentary with so many years ago, which we couldn't imagine doing anything else. And that has led to this podcast. But serving in Vietnam, 1969 to 70, as a torque gunner. I'll say the torque for the people in the military. For the people not in the military, he was a door gunner on a Loach helicopter, the Scout Observers, a notoriously risky assignment. Specialist 4 in Vietnam, left the military as a sergeant. Please welcome Mr. Mike Lentino. Thank you for joining us today, Mike.
Well, welcome, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and it seems weird that it's been so long, but we met in Kansas City at the Apache Troop reunion that was done every 2 years. It was going to bump up to every year, but something called COVID has kind of ruined this one we were going to do. But Mike has an advantage in that he has actually seen the Apache Blues movie. He was part of our very first test screening audience, which we did for Apache Troop. And I have to tell you, as an aside, Mike, that's the most nerve-wracking thing we've ever done as filmmakers.
Oh, I bet.
Is to take not only a finished
interview
movie,
a bunch of us cranky old guys. Yeah, right. Sign me up.
not only a finished movie that no one has ever seen, but a movie about the guys in the audience.
Right.
We stood at the back door and I was like, all right, we're either going to get a clap or we're going to hit the road, like right now. But we feel it was well received, and that was turned into the most nerve-wracking thing we've done to the most gratifying thing that we've done.
Yeah, so thank you for making that movie. That was excellent to watch, and certainly jolts up a bunch of memories from the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, we did a test screening later here in Seattle, and one of the questions we got from the audience when talking about the downed helicopters, which we can get into more later on an official side, but we have a segment for the audience about downed helicopters, and I admit it's pretty intense, and we had a lot of discussions about how intense we wanted to make it, and we just decided we're going to make it intense. One of the questions was, do we have to make it so graphic and intense? And so Dustin and I said, yes, we did, because it's their story. This is what they went through, and we would be doing a disservice to you guys if we didn't do that. So deal. And afterwards, this husband came up and was like, I'm sorry about that. So it was pretty funny. But I'm going to take Dustin's first question that he normally does and ask you how you decided to join the U.S. military, the Army in this case.
I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in a fairly moderately rough neighborhood. There was certainly gang activity around there. Drugs were starting to hit the streets. At 15, 16 years old, my friends that I grew up with, there were guys who should have been the starting shortstop for the New York Yankees for 20 years. And they're sitting behind a building in the shade, pulling a rubber tube, going, hey, Mikey, you got to try this. And it's like, no, man, the world of gangs, the world of drugs has a fork in the road. One way goes to the cemetery and the other way goes to prison. And I had no interest in either one. My family life personally wasn't exactly the most stable. I graduated, I turned 17 in April, graduated in June, and I was in basic training doing push-ups in July. It was pretty much bang, bang, bang. It was a joint family decision between my mother, my sister, and I, and it was designed to protect my mother, which any good son should be more than willing to do, and I was, regardless of the risks. And went in the military to get off the streets, number one, which were going to take me down. They take everybody down sooner or later, and put myself in a better position. I knew I should be going to college. I wanted to go to a college and live in the dorm. My parents couldn't afford that stuff, and the thought of living at home for 4 more years to go to college was absolutely out of the question. And there's a lot of ex-military in my family. It was in those days still considered an honorable thing to do. It isn't quite the way things turned out initially, but that's the past and that's the reality. Basic training, went to helicopter school, turned 18, and Uncle Sam's idea of a birthday card was orders to Vietnam. So hop on the big old jet airplane, fly to Oakland, California, and then you jump the pond and land in Vietnam. It was that fast. It literally just zipped by. And I was initially trained as a helicopter mechanic on Hueys, of all things, Charlie and Delta models. And after 3, 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks of working in maintenance, I patched one too many bullet holes. I washed out too much blood, and something inside of me changed. And I walked across the field to our top sergeant. Have you met John Williamson, our top?
I know him by reputation, but I've not met him.
Awesome man. Awesome man. He spent a half an hour trying to talk me out of joining Scouts, and I wasn't having it. And then I started flying Scouts. You start as an observer. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for everybody. Some guys never get past the first 2-hour mission as an observer and come out of there screaming their brains out, terrified, and they want nothing to do with getting in a helicopter. Flying in a Loach, especially in a mission profile, is like being on a roller coaster for about an hour. You got to have abs of solid steel, hyper focused attention, because things happen kind of quick out there. A lot of foliage, a lot of dense foliage, a lot of people hiding. Stuff happens quick. You get indoctrinated real fast into it, and you cross through the barriers you have to cross through to continue doing it. I have no idea how many hours I flew. I know it was for months. Wasn't really keeping track of how many hours I was flying, as opposed to keeping track of when my year was up and I would be able to rotate back home. That did not happen. On January the 10th, 1970, out on a patrol just shy of the Cambodian border, as best as I can remember. We had been sent to look for an NVA regiment, and we found them all. And they were all shooting at us. It was like the Disneyland fireworks at 9 o'clock at night routine. And my life started flashing in front of my eyes. I thought, this is it, you're done. And I just did my job, start shooting and shoot back. I felt the impacts, and my left hand started flying around, and it felt like somebody was hitting me with a baseball bat, which was an insane thought, because there's not enough room in the backseat of a Loach for me, never mind somebody else, and be able to swing a bat at me. And then it dawned on me, I'm shot. To back up a little bit, on the flight over from Oakland, 2 things were in the back of my mind. What would it feel like if I shot and killed someone? And what would it feel like if I got shot? And I got both answers. I was raised a Catholic. Human life is sacred to Catholics. To be put in a situation where I had to go against Catholic credo, I didn't hesitate the first time. You can't. I did what I was supposed to do, did it the right way. And then getting shot, believe it or not, doesn't hurt. There was really no pain. I dropped my gun, my machine gun, and I picked it back up. Ron was the pilot, and Rick Pierce was flying as the observer. Rick Pierce was going to be a scout pilot, but you go out, you don't throw guys like that into the fire. They need a little experience to see the rhythms and the patterns and the routines and learn the communication between a door gunner and a pilot. And, whatever hit the fan, we limped away, kind of flopped down somewhere next to an open field. Gather weapons and ammo. That's World War II movie stuff, but that's quite true. Shot or not shot, I wanted weapons. We were way too close to them, and I didn't think that day was going to be over. Fortunately, we were flying in with a third helicopter, a Huey that was basically our own personal air ambulance in case something happened. And we were down on the ground. We're trying to figure out who can handle what weapon. Ron Black decides to take the M60, and without asking me about it, he pulls the trigger, and the barrel is right next to my foot, and it fires because it was hot. The gun didn't jam. I dropped it because my arm hurt too bad. I couldn't close my finger on the trigger anymore. So I had a few choice comments about that to him. And then to Rick Pierce, I turned and said, "Welcome to Alpha Troop. Get used to this. It happens all the time." And having met him in a reunion, the first reunion I went to was in Orlando, and I think 2006, I believe. My memory may be rusty on that one. I met him and he remembered that, and he told me he flew his whole scout term, never got a scratch. And he goes, "But I never forgot what you said. You had an intense look in your eyes and you weren't joking." Well, good. Well, somebody got something out of it.
Yeah. Actually, I see Dustin is waiting to be admitted, so I'm going to bring him in real quick.
All right.
Click it there.
Can I harass him?
Oh, absolutely. I'd be disappointed if you didn't.
Yeah, I do have a rep to maintain.
Oh, hello, Mr. Dustin.
Oh, hello. How are you, gentlemen?
How was your nap?
Dustin, how you doing? I know what I'm going to get you for Christmas. An accurate watch. An accurate watch and a calendar.
I had you guys on for 3:30. I'm sorry.
That's
I was
all right.
over at my dad's house helping him with his motorcycle.
Well, that's important.
All right.
Well,
absolutely. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you too. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing good. Got myself a German Shepherd. I had her for about 2 years now. She is an absolute, she's not here right now. She's an absolute pleasure to have around. She has helped me tremendously with PTSD symptoms, the hypervigilance at night. If there's a noise and she doesn't react to it, I don't wake up. Or if I do, it's
awesome.
briefly. She's not hooting and hollering. I go back to sleep. No more perimeter walking. No more, dealing with that nonsense and all the sleep disruptions. It's been kind of nice to sleep in bursts at night rather than waking up every hour on the hour.
You've subcontracted that to her.
Yes, I decided to let her handle the Homeland Security part of the residence, and if she doesn't start barking, and she doesn't like anybody. She doesn't like people walking by in the street. God forbid if you have a dog, if you're running on a bicycle. I live in maybe you don't know. I live in Arizona, and it's fall now, which means it's not quite so freaking hot. We've gone from freaking hot to not so freaking hot, and then we'll go to just like sort of warm and tepid. So people are out walking more often, and she doesn't like anybody on the property. She doesn't like the mail lady, and yet the mail lady pets her, but then the next day she's right back at it again. She's kind of funny. But that's okay. That's my girly girl.
Nice.
Sounds ideal.
Yeah, and we'll actually get back to the nighttime for the audience. But just talking about, we were just talking, Dustin, about his last flight. I assume that was your last flight in the Scout.
That last flight as a Scout, my ulna was shattered. Somehow I got shot 3 times in my left arm. Somehow at all 3 of them, and the shrapnel missed the artery.
Wow.
Or I'd have bled out because our rescue bird couldn't come down because a forward air controller had called in a whole bunch of F4s and F104s and were very happily napalming the 1st NVA regiment. I was getting a little antsy with him hovering up there at about 7,000 feet. And I turned to Ron Black and said, "I'm going to shoot this MF down myself. If he doesn't come down here, what's taking so long? It'd be nice to get out of here." And and I was slipping into shock. I mean, we're out in a jungle and it's 90 degrees out there, 85, 90% humidity. I should be sweating. I'm shivering. I see goosebumps. We've been trained for that kind of stuff. So recognizing the signs of shock, but we're not we're still in Kansas here. We are by in no means out of harm's way, and it was an effort to keep my brain functioning on a high enough level to be able to fight. Could I fight? And yeah, I felt I could. I couldn't use my machine gun because that's two hands, but I had a single shot grenade launcher, and most of us had those, and most of us were extremely accurate with them. And I thought we could, do our own little Alamo or Custer's Last Stand or whatever. Those didn't exactly have happy endings for the good guys, but whatever. I'd already decided that with the levels of injuries I had, that I wasn't going to let myself be taken as a POW. I had taken a fragmentary grenade, straightened the pins out. If you ever watch a World War II movie where a guy grabs a grenade and pulls the pin out with his teeth, your teeth are going to come out before you get the pin out of there. That's a stainless steel cotter pin, and it takes some oomph to get those things straight or some oomph to pull them. So I was straightening them out, and Ron and Rick caught wind of that and didn't like that too much. I told them, then move out of the way. I'm not going and finding out what the Hanoi Hilton has to offer. I'm sure it isn't a spa and turn down and a little mint on the pillow or a chocolate chip cookie, a little split of champagne. I didn't think any of that was in my immediate future if we would become POWs. Because all of us wear the identical flight suits and none of us wear rank or insignia. So it's going to be assumed I'm a pilot, and they were not so nice to pilots over that trip, shall we say. So that was a part of the Vietnam experience I had no desire to partake in. Fortunately, the bird came down, we're climbing on with all our gear. The Blue Troop, which Apache Troop, how Apache Troop works, the reds, whites, and blues. They are on the way to secure the site, haul away the helicopter. And John Williams was the pilot of the Huey, and I think R.B. Alexander was sitting in the left or right-hand seat. Ignore that. I'm going to potential spam. And when we had first we took heavy fire. We took, I don't know how many hits in the helicopter. We were leaking fuel from the tanks past the exhaust system. Sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'm sure your magical editors can figure it out. The raw fuel was flowing through the engine compartment by a 600-degree tailpipe, so it creates smoke. And on an open mic, R.B. Alexander goes, "They're going to blow." And I'm like, "Gee, guy, show me a little more confidence there, will you?" I have more trust in my pilot than that. But my mechanic's ear could hear noises. No conversation in a cockpit should ever start with, "What was that noise?" Particularly if it's in a helicopter, the bad things start happening after that. It gets nasty. It gets nasty fast. And, we kind of limped away. And we got picked up. I got taken to a modern day version of MASH, the MASH units in Korea, kind of big inflatable bubble that we had in St. In. I refused to get in a wheelchair. I walked. It was just my arm. My legs worked just fine. I was tired. I was weak. Still cold. And got whipped into the hospital. They cut off all my clothes. I had numerous scratches on my face and arms. It was shrapnel. I was sitting inside of just a swirling pool of bullet fragments. And I'm just lucky. I'm a lucky man, and I know I'm lucky, and I've tried to take advantage of every day because of it. You get given a chance like that, you better do something about it and move forward in your life in a positive way. But they wheeled me into the OR, and a surgeon walks in, and I looked at him and asked him, "Am I keeping my hand?" And he goes, quote unquote, "I don't know, kid, you have 3 big holes in your hand." I am all of 18 years old. I've had enough with the macho BS. I want my mother, I want her now, and I want a big plate of spaghetti and meatballs, Italian comfort food. I'm Italian. When I woke up post-op, laying down, I'm on a big pillow, big bandage on here, and I could see, I don't know if you can see this or not, this part of my fingers I could see, and I clenched that fist. The pain was so intense, it knocked me out, but right before I went out, I realized that if it hurt, it worked, and I calmed down. Right there, it was like, okay, you can handle this. You've been through worse. We can do this. Joe Foss was a World War II veteran. He was an ace with the Marines. He was the governor of, I think, South Dakota. He was the commissioner of the AFL Football League a little before your time. and he oversaw the AFL merging into the NFL. He established an organization here that's still ongoing. And he created a program called VIP, Veterans Inspiring Patriotism, and I got asked to do guest speaking. Like, okay, we'll go do it. And essentially what we do is go into middle schools, high schools. I've been in a few colleges, and we talk about kind of what we're talking about now. What was the military like? Why did you go in? What happened? And then there's always a question and answer session. And if you want to be kept on your toes, sit in front of a bunch of teenagers who have built-in BS detectors and take that rapid fire stuff. That questions come fast and furious, keeps me on my toes. Bad idea for me to expose myself to this. The first time I did a presentation, I slept like I was dead that night. I slept through the entire night for the first time in more years than I care to think about. And when I had my next session with her, I told her about it. I said, no, I'm not going to stop. I mean, I'm up around 16,000 students that I've spoken to, tens of thousands of questions I've answered. I find it therapeutic. I found that, the current term, close the circle. And I sleep like I'm dead every night. So whenever they want, like now with this virus nonsense going on, I don't know if we're going to get to it this school year. Usually I go right around in August when the history classes get to Vietnam. And the other time I get out there a lot is Veterans Day. So I'm hoping for Veterans Day this year to get out. I just like being with kids.
Yeah.
The kids are a joy to behold. They're not mine. I'm sending them home. I don't have to take them home. It's like my grandkids. I send them home dirty and wired and go justice, mofos.
Yeah.
It's the way it goes.
Well, and I do want to ask you, I'm going to circle back to a couple things.
Sure.
One, you're talking about how when you face a situation like where you got shot and realize you're lucky and you've been given a gift. And it's the same question that I asked R.B. Alexander the very first time we met him. And RB's been on this podcast, and he's not going to object to me saying this because we joke about it all the time. He lives life to the full. I mean, he'll be the first to tell you he's a little kid at heart, wants to go surfing, wants to go skiing. And I asked him just point blank, is that because of the night in Vietnam where you told us you thought you were going to die?
Right.
And he's like, yes, every day since that night has been a gift. Has been an absolute gift, and I would be remiss if I didn't, if I wasn't appreciative of that gift. Would that be an accurate statement for you think, for that?
Dead on the money. And pretty much, when you go to the reunions, those are all hardcore combat guys. There's no cooks, no dishwashers, there's no clerks. They don't go. They're welcome, but maybe they don't feel comfortable. Heck, I don't know. There's no mechanics. Nobody comes from there. And it's only recently that some of the blues have started showing up because they didn't think they would feel welcome. And it's like, hold on there. You're part of A Troop, and you're a big part of A Troop. We all depended on each other. But yes, the second childhood, I've gotten old enough to the point, I've had enough surgeries to the point where doing things that had the potential to be fatal because it was exciting. And what RB was saying, and we'd all agree with this, we're looking for the adrenaline rush of flying a patrol knowing you're going to be getting shot at and you're going to shoot somebody. A lot of veterans came back. They went to fire departments. They went to police departments. They went to work on high wire workers. They worked in dangerous, risky jobs, and none of it comes close, not even remotely close. So you try to do it in other ways. Let's surf the next biggest wave. Well, I really don't have the experience to surf this wave, but well, let's do it. Sounds like a good idea. Somebody said I'm living my second childhood, and I looked at them and said, what makes you think I was done with my first? You can't see it, but right next to me on my right in the driveway is a 2009 Hemi Challenger that I've beefed up to about 525 horsepower. It's a 6-speed, and if it had wings, it would take off. This thing is frighteningly fast. I own it with a friend of mine. He drives it like a little old lady. I drive it like I stole it. The car is meant to be run hard, and I run the snot out of it. And that's, I can get older, but nobody can make me grow up. At family reunions and things like that, if you want to know where I am, find the kids. because the adults bore me half to death.
Well, and flying a Loach, they did say, we had it described to us, it's like NASCAR in the sky, or, like
Pretty
being
much.
in the Ferrari of
It's
helicopters.
a Ferrari of helicopters. Some of the pilots were better at exploring what's known as a flight envelope. One pilot in particular, and I flew a lot with him, and he's not going to complain about this, is Bill McIntosh.
I knew you were
Bill
going to say
McIntosh
that.
rewrote the flight manual on that thing. He, it's like, hey, this sounds like a good idea. What do you want to do? And then we're into it. It's like, I didn't think you could fly backwards that fast. A Loach would loop. He did it right.
Wow.
I will never admit to having done that, because that would have violated all government policies at the time.
They did that in the James Bond movie. They looped the helicopter.
Right.
But yeah, every single story we've gotten about this crazy pilot did this to save our butt, it's always Bill McIntosh.
Every time.
Right.
Every time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Put his skid down on the side of a bomb crater that was no larger than the Loach to get in there. Put his skid down on the side of a mountain. Like,
yeah, I wasn't with him for those days. We did enough other crazy, insane stuff that, afterwards you sit back in the seat and you wipe your brow. Did we just do that? And are we still alive? Yeah. Well, okay. Well, that's another one for the books. And let's go teach everybody else how to get away with this. But the maneuverability and the ability to stop a Loach on a dime and then take off like a paperclip from a rubber band, that would have been a hard target to hit from the ground. I have looked into multiple barrels with muzzle flashes seemingly right into my eyes, and they missed. I didn't, but they did.
well, and that kind of, you were in Vietnam, what, 19 years old when you're on? 18? Yeah, 18 when you were sent. The pilots, 19, 20, 21 years old.
21 maybe.
You're giving these 18, 19, 20-year-old guys a helicopter.
a brand new state-of-the-art. We had state-of-the-art weapons and enough testosterone to sink a battleship. Invincible, immortal, never dawned on us. You don't openly acknowledge the risk factor, because that's distracting, and you can't afford to let yourself ever get distracted. Or bad.
Yeah. Well, and that we talked to Craig Jorgensen about when he was alert and his team got decimated.
Right. I've seen that video.
And they tried to pull him out of the field because, the problem is, especially with the LERPs who are out there alone, you need them to feel invincible. And they had problems when they found out that they weren't.
Admitting weakness,
yeah.
that you're injured, and you have to admit to yourself, I am not combat effective. And any soldier that's not willing to do that puts other soldiers' lives at risk. You want to see a guilty soldier? Find one who lost somebody by either something he did or didn't do. You had a guy with survivor guilt that will never, ever, you can talk about it, you can treat it, you can't cure something like that. It will never go away. I have enough bad survivor's guilt as it is. The general attitude is, why me? Why them, not me? Am I just that much lucky? Is that what we're going to tell us out there? It's not like we all weren't equally talented. It's not like we all weren't as equally. I mean, we ran those M60 machine guns with like pinpoint laser accuracy. Tracers help a lot with that. But still, you got to get right on target right off the bat. I don't have time for that couple of milliseconds to adjust. That's the life or death difference. And survivor guilt, yeah. We go to the Vietnam Wall. Yeah, you bet there's survivor guilt. Did you guys go to the Alexandria reunion?
We did. One of the treasured things I've ever done was to go out to the wall with Jim Brown and Ed Beal was there, and Doc and Jack Hughley and Paul McCord. That was the first time we'd met Paul McCord. And to go to the wall with them was it's a pretty special day.
I went with a group of guys who had never seen the wall. And at that point in time, I'd seen the real one twice, and I'm not looking at the camera. And I've seen the replica traveling walls probably a half a dozen times. And knowing that this is their first time, I was kind of like watching over my shoulder. We essentially have our own panel. There's so many, 100 guys. It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's humbling. It drives you to your knees. You can't help it. But there's groups of us, and it's not what most people common to or contrary to what most people would think. We're not sitting there telling war stories. How you doing? We've been around each other enough. How's your wife doing? How's the grandkids? Who's this? Who's that? How you doing with your health? It's all of that. It's when somebody new shows up, and that's another piece of the puzzle to plug in. And then that, the jungle drums start beating, like so and so is here, and you drift over and make contact with them, and what piece of the story, because everything was pretty compartmentalized. I go out a pre-flight a helicopter or two, load my guns up there, get some piece of me observer to sit up in the front seat, and get in the back seat. We take off, and only a couple of times did I ask a pilot, "Where are we going? What are we doing?" You don't want to know.
Just got to go do your
You're
job.
absolutely right. I don't want to know. I don't want to think about it. But we go out there flying at 2,300 feet, and then it was showtime. We're dropping down and starting weaving around the bob and weave routine around trees and whatnot, and exchanging pleasantries with indigenous personnel, generally at high rates of fire.
Yeah, international relations.
Right. Yeah, it's.
Well, I know you have
General Patton had the ultimate line: "Don't you die for your country, make the other sucker die for his country."
Yeah. I know you've got a time limit here, so I want to get into returning home. Don't want to lead you in, and I don't want to pretend every Vietnam veteran had the same welcome home. I'll put it this way: did you come back through California or Texas?
I came back by way of from Vietnam to Japan for surgery and initial rehab, and then to Alaska in the C-130 on a stretcher. I can't describe how much fun that was. Sorry, I looked away from my camera again. And then from Alaska, we went to Walter Reed. And then from Walter Reed, I found a chaplain, and he managed to get me back to St. Albans Naval Hospital in Queens, New York, which is very close to where I live in Brooklyn, so that my family, friends, and whatnot could see me in the hospital. So I got yet another, yes, very lucky break, a very, very lucky break. Walter Reed back in those days was to be avoided like the plague. It had more than its fair share of problems. They had the concept of sterile then versus now was, let's just say, a little different. And in a Navy hospital, and you're an Army personnel, you're like square peg, proverbial round hole type of thing.
Yeah,
but it was okay. Eventually got discharged, went home, had a 30-day leave before I was going to be reassigned, and I was hearing the trucks backfire because everything was carbureted in those days. There was very little fuel injection, so a carburetor out of adjustment or the timing off, you're going to get a backfire that sounds like a hand grenade going off sometimes, especially with big trucks. So yeah, I was one of those quaking and hiding under bushes and stuff like that. And my civilian friends, nobody knew what to do. Nobody said anything. My family, all my aunts in the family, they were speechless. They didn't know what to do. My closest female cousin, Karen. Yeah, you're famous, Karen. I love you. Her family nickname is Sugar. Now I'm in trouble. That's okay. She'll see this. She told me once I was sitting at the table with my arm in a cast, and my fork was halfway to my mouth, and I was not there. I was into that 1,000-yard stare thing, and then it snaps back with it's like being slapped in the face, or at least it was for me a few times. And then you realize all the time I was over there, I wanted to be right here, literally right where I was sitting. And now that I'm sitting here, I want to be back there because I know what's going on. I know what's happening. My friends are getting hurt, and I wanted to go back, and I knew I couldn't. And it was frustrating. It was very, very frustrating.
Well, and that's in Vietnam, for the audience, they had what's called the staggered return policy, and obviously your return policy was a bit adjusted due to getting shot, but people would rotate in one at a time and out one at a time. I can understand the Army's thinking of that way we will always have experienced people doing this job. It also meant you always had rookies doing the job. But, now they've changed it. You go over together, you come back together, and because people would come home alone. Like, you left, all your buddies are there. You've got no one to talk to at home, but like you were just saying, you still had your buddies to worry about. And there was no Zoom back then. There was no FaceTime. There was no nothing.
Snail mail.
I mean, what is that like for the audience who maybe thinks they know what that might be like? What was that like to just...
Well, that's the two ways things were done. I mean, in World War II, entire companies trained together, which leads to high levels of fraternization, which becomes a problem. Was your buddy dies, you're now combat ineffective. So in my time, I went over there on a Boeing 707 with 250 guys that I never saw again. And my time with Alpha Troop, by nature, I'm fairly gregarious, but it was intimidating enough that I was very quiet. Pilots certainly hung out and did their own thing. I didn't interact with too many guys there. I had a sixth sense of, I make a good friend, I'm going to lose a good friend, or he's going to lose a good friend, and I didn't like either side of that coin. To deal with that in some, through a civilian's eyes, that's impossible to conceptualize. You have to be there. You have to be in that, living in that moment. There's no, I can't think of the word at the moment, but there's just no way to convey that. And I'm not saying civilians in a negative way. To me, the difference between veterans and civilians, veterans don't feel like we're better than anybody else. We're different. Our experiences shaped us into who and what we are. That's why World War II vets came home and basically built the country. They were pretty highly motivated. When we came home, all I remember thinking is, leave me alone. I've been seeing and doing things no 18-year-old should be doing, especially with a 19-year-old pilot. I can't think of a worse combination, but oddly enough, it worked. It worked because it was never been done, never been tried. Okay, let's give this a whirl. But in terms of, trying to live it vicariously, you can't do that. You can't understand that the first time you realize a bullet hit your helicopter, that was aimed for you. That changes you. I can remember the first, sort of a halfway funny story actually, but I still remember the first. I don't remember who the pilot is, and I definitely can't remember the observer. We had flown out on a patrol, and the pilot didn't say anything. He just dove down on a mission profile. And there's a piece of avionics equipment in those days in anything that flew, and it was called an ADF, an automatic direction finder. It works on AM frequency, which means we could play Armed Forces Network music in the helicopter. And it wasn't too common to play it on the way out, but it was playing on the way out. I had my head leaning back against the bulkhead. I was daydreaming. I think my gun was loaded, and I was listening to Smile a Little Smile for Me, Rosemarie, when the overhead window got shot out. And the pilot said, are you planning on getting involved with this? And I made an abrupt comment about shutting the music off with a couple more words in there.
Gotcha.
And we got ready to go back to business. And after that, it was like, no. Sometimes after the missions, if they were intense, sometimes we would listen to Armed Forces Network to like dial it down a little bit. Sometimes it would be really quiet in the cabin, and sometimes be really chatty. Me, the observer, and the pilot were just yakking away with each other like it's going out of style. Whatever you got to do to decompress, you got to do to decompress. But as far as what's better, going over with a company and everybody, the good part about that is you've trained together, you know how to react together. The bad part of that is the fraternization and the loss. You go over fragmented, and you brought it up earlier about, going out with total rookies. as a general rule, I always was aware of, if we're taking out a brand new pilot, there's an experienced observer and an experienced gunner. You can't send 3 rookies. They're not coming back. There's going to be a mistake made. There's some kind of communication that won't happen. Utilizing your gunbird, that little cobra floating around up there with a very serious attitude and a sting to it. When to use it, how to use it, when to deploy it. That takes time. That takes experience. And you learn that, like we all do. We fly as an observer. I flew long enough where I felt comfortable in the helicopter. The routine was normal to me. I had a pilot take me out and check me out as a gunner and test me for accuracy and stuff like that. Passed that with flying colors and started flying as a gunner. And then just, it was one day at a time, and then it was 1 hour at a time, and 1 minute at a time, because you just don't know. And you live with that uncertainty for a long time. I got first cav friends within miles of me that are still in a bunker and they can't get out, and it breaks my heart. Why could I do it? Why am I so much, I'm not smarter than they are. I'm not better than they are. We're equals, we're peers. When I talk about it with them, and they don't do well in public, and they don't go out alone. And when we go out in public, we have a tendency to go together, and I kind of run interference, try to keep us out of certain types of environments that'll trigger them off. The PTSD is real. And VA went through a bit of a time back a few years ago where some freshly trained Harvard geniuses decided that PTSD is going to be curable. PTSD is not a psychological condition. It's classified in the Physician's Desk Reference, PDR, as a disease, and it is classified as treatable but not curable.
We talked with Dr. Roy Clymer, who used to be head of at Walter Reed, for basically, it's got a very long name to it, but basically treating post-traumatic stress. And that was one of the turning points for us in this story that we're telling. Well, first of all, he hates that they call it a disorder. He's like, it's not a disorder. It's just
a learned behavior.
It's a different experiences. You come from a place where you hear a loud noise, you duck, or you could die. Dustin and I don't come from that place, so we're going to have different reactions to a car backfiring. And if it was the 3 of us, Dustin and I would be in the majority, and society wants to say, well, you're not in the majority, so therefore you must be wrong. No one's wrong. It's
anybody can be traumatized.
Exactly.
You get in a bad car crash and you live and your friend dies.
Yep.
Congratulations. You just got PTSD. Welcome to my world.
Yeah, and that's kind of
it's not just combat that it comes from.
Yeah, and we were, and I know this quote well because I've been working on it in the edit for about a week now. I think it's, and I don't want to say this is from Dr. Clymer, it's very hard for society to bridge this gap. And the direct quote is, we don't live in a world where I'm afraid I'm just going to suddenly come down with something like bipolar. I don't sit there and worry about that, but I do worry, and I'm using I very generally as society, I do worry that something very traumatic could happen to me today that leads me to have PTS, and I don't want to think about that. And so therefore it's very hard to talk to veterans about that, because I don't want to be exposed to this thing that I don't know how I would deal with that. And as a veteran, what we like to ask, and we are trying to work on something to talk with veterans, especially during the lockdown, but we don't want to talk so much with veterans. We want to start talking to society about how we can bridge that gap. Like, how would you, for any civilians, I really hate you because it can seem bad, but anyone who hasn't been in the military, like, what would you as a veteran say? Like, how can we start bridging that gap of talking about PTS?
Well, I just sort of mentioned it a couple of minutes ago. And as I said earlier, the Veterans Inspiring Patriotism program through the Joe Foss organization, that gets me in front of very impressionable young minds and trying to convey to them what it feels like. And I use that example all the time. You and your best friend are in a car crash. She dies, you don't. That's trauma. And no, you're not going to forget that. And that's the first trap that PTSD offers. You try to block it out, doesn't work. You try to lock it away in a little box in the back of your mind. That definitely doesn't work. It has to be confronted, openly dealt with. I've been lucky enough to talk with veterans and their wives and their little children down, they're adults now, about I can verbalize those feelings. Some of the other guys don't have or can't say it out loud. They know it as intrinsically as a sense and a giant dark cloud. It's heartbreaking for me to see it. These are good, highly productive, well-qualified people. And it's the civilians in their lives that are paying the price. The anger comes out of nowhere at lightning speed. That has taken a lot of counseling and a lot of self-awareness of the space I'm in. So for civilians, and this is what I used to talk about with the kids. I said, if you got your mother, your father, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, when they come home from the military, don't ask them about the military. Ask them, I want to go to a ball game. Take me for ice cream. Take me to a movie. Take me to the park. Play a board game with me. Get them distracted and get them, because their normal has to change to the new normal. I'm back in the civilian world again. I can't have that normal I had in the combat zone. That's different. That awareness, that absolutely hyper alert activity that you're constantly turned on. I mean, ask any of the guys in A Troop. Ask them if they ever slept with both eyes closed. They're going to say no. None of us did. We got mortared constantly. We got overrun once that I remember. It wasn't bad enough flying. You can't even get a couple hours of shut-eye at night without, sleeping with loaded weapons, ready to rock and roll at a moment's notice. How do you replicate that in the civilian world? You can't. You can do all the simulators you want. You can do all the video games you want. Years ago, my friends wanted me to go hunting. And I said, hunting for what? We're going to go get deer. Deer. So I get the whole cull the herd thing. I mean, I get that. Me covering myself with deer urine, sitting up on a blind on a tree for 3 days, freezing my canastas off, isn't appealing to me. But on the other hand, if my family needs to eat, Bambi's going down with one shot in the head.
Yeah.
That juxtaposition you live with every day, that you're capable of doing that and turning around and going back to sleep. Same group of guys wanted to go paintballing. I said, sure, I'll go with paintballing. Let's use live ammo. Let's make it challenging. Yeah, paintball stings a little bit when you get hit in the face or bare skin. No, let's make it for real, man. Let's let you discover what a 308 feels like when it hits you in skin. It's pretty destructive.
Yeah.
I mean, I said it jokingly with them, but, that's with civilian friends, there's that line in the sand. And it's not that it isn't crossable. It's definitely, as I've gotten older, as I tackle the bull by the horns, and it's like, I have to win this fight. I have young kids. I have grandchildren that are young. I want to be here. I don't feel like I have to. I just want to. I want to be part of their lives. I have reasons to live. I've got a 4,000-pound, four-tired beast in the driveway. Believe me, I wake up every morning looking for an excuse to go on a grocery run in that bad boy. Can you reestablish that zest for life again? We were talking about RB and doing all kinds of crazy, exciting, adrenaline pumping kind of stuff. Yeah, and then you got to come down from that, assuming you haven't broken any bones.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of instances where it wasn't real clear I was going to survive this. But once you survive the war, it doesn't occur to you, or to me, that I'm not going to get through this. I win.
Yeah.
I can't let the demons in. I wouldn't wish what living in my brain or RB's brain or Ron Black or Bill McIntyre, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy on the planet. to have to experience what goes on in your head on a day-by-day basis, and then have to be nice and hold the door for the little old lady coming and getting her groceries. And then the little old lady, we touched on it briefly. Coming back to the civilian world, for me, from Vietnam was very, very different because I did it through the medical side of the house. And then it was suddenly out in the streets, and there were incidents. There was multiple incidents where it dawned on me, I didn't want to take, none of us wanted a ticker tape parade. This isn't World War II. We want to be left alone. Don't buy me a car, I'll buy my own. I don't need you to give me a house. I don't need you to find me a girlfriend or a wife. I'll do it on my own. And we not only were not left alone, I can't even begin to describe what it feels like to have somebody, well, technically my peer group, I prefer to use age group, those are not my peers, call me a baby killer, call me a murderer. And I'm like, hold on there, those, you got legitimate comments there, but I'm the messenger. Go to the source of the problem, but they lack the courage to do that. Something that happens commonly now is I get younger people walk up. I have Purple Heart plates on my car. I'm usually wearing a hat with some kind of insignia. Today I got a shirt on because we're on camera. Thank you for serving. And it took me a while to figure out how to respond to that. Saying thank you seemed conceited. And finally, saying you're welcome seemed conceited. And I started saying thank you. We really appreciate that. And we do. I do. I take it. But when it's somebody in my age group, I can't help it. Guys, I cannot help it. Where were you 50 years ago when a quick pat on the back, and it's all over now, you're going to be okay, would have gone miles and miles. I'll get a bunch of teenagers, they'll see my Purple Heart plates and go, oh, that's cool.
Not how you earned it.
Well, guys, it wasn't too cool at the time, but I get your point. And then they don't know what it is, so I explain it. It's like, oh, wow, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is cool. I agree, it's cool. I'm sorry you had to earn it, but it is cool.
Well, at least I lived to talk about it.
Yeah.
I forgot who I was flying with. So a piece of shrapnel nicked me in my flight suit on my right shoulder. It didn't even bleed. It was like using a thumbtack and scraping your skin. It doesn't bleed, it just turns red. Mm-hmm. And the pilot was like, hey, I'll write you up for a Purple Heart for that. And I wish I could remember who it was. Because I told him, you write me up for a Purple Heart on our next mission, you're going to get one, and it's going to be friendly fire. I'm going to shoot you right in the back of the leg.
Yeah.
He didn't bother writing that up either.
Because you got a boo-boo?
I got a boo. It didn't even need a Band-Aid. I didn't even go to the medics. It's like, dude, it's not bleeding. Who cares?
Well, if you're going to run for president or something, you should have taken that. Like, yeah. No.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know who you're talking about. And I know a lot more about that than has ever been released out into the general public.
Yeah. I'll retract that before we get too far into politics for the audience.
Yeah, no politics in this channel.
But I do want to segue a little bit of what we're talking about in terms of, you'll get the younger generation now, and it seems like the worm has turned a little in terms of your age group for Vietnam vets. I mean, now you actually have people stolen valor pretending to be Vietnam vets. That's a 180.
Yeah. That's a burr in my saddle too.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. Nowadays, we have an extra layer, so to say, to veterans coming home of, the lockdown, of cutting off a lot of avenues to be able to talk, PTS groups not being allowed to meet. And there is no way to pussyfoot around this. There is a rise in the suicide rate, even above what it was. As a Vietnam veteran who has that experience, the 50 years of experience, the welcome that you got, sorry, for people on the podcast channels, I'm doing air quotes around welcome. What advice do you have to modern day troops about, there are a lot, I hate to say it, but there are a lot of parallels right now in terms of how the public views our military engagements and the way our government is being looked at. You have this experience. What advice would you offer?
You can't crawl in the bottle. You got to learn to talk to each other. From a career point of view, for a career soldier, having to discuss PTSD is a deal killer. They just won't do it. The suicide rate is absolutely heartbreaking to me. I've interacted with a few of the younger guys. They have my phone number. It's 24/7. Don't do it. If I was speaking to a larger group of them, all of you should know each other's phone numbers. You cannot let each other go. You won't leave anybody. The saying on the battlefield is leave no one behind. My attitude towards that is, why would I start doing it now? Why would I leave anybody behind now? There's still life on the line here. This is still life and death. The frustration they feel when they drop into that never land from being discharged from the military before the VA catches up, that can be a year to 18 months. These guys don't have any pay. They have no income. I've helped set up resume writing to translate military MOSs. What does that mean in the civilian world? To do that with them. There was it's closed now, unfortunately, a homeless vet shelter in downtown Phoenix that I poured a lot of time, a lot of money into, and it just vaporized. You can't quit. The word quit doesn't exist in my vocabulary. Just somebody who's a veteran, whether you served in a combat arena or not, there's no quit. You do. Yes, some days are really, really dark. You need phone numbers in that phone. Hey, I'm not feeling too good. Okay, let's talk. Want to meet? What do you want to do? I don't care. 3 o'clock in the morning, fine. I bring the dog. You know, I mean, literally, my dog is a big time icebreaker. I have a friend who's a highway patrolman here. He has PTSD, pretty bad, and that dog is his lifeline. He comes in the house, she runs right to him. Plus that he gives her ice cubes soaked in bourbon, which might have something to do with it. I already told him when she has cirrhosis of the liver, I'm giving him the veterinarian bill. But to young people, you can't stop. You wouldn't stop before. So why now? I'm not seeing that disconnect in there. I can understand how the walls can feel like they're closing in. I get that. Been there, done that. The suicidal ideation is real. Well, we talk about contemporary vets, 22 a day, which I think is abominable. Suicidal ideation in Vietnam vets still exists today. I got a couple guys that they're ready to swallow a gun barrel. Like, hold on. Can we talk about this a little bit first? What are the implications of that? You've led a good, honorable, productive life. And the last thing we're going to remember is you swallowed a 45? Does that make sense to you? I mean, and put the gun down. I'm not going to go grab it out of your hands. I can see it's loaded and the safety's off. Put it down. What does this do? Why would you leave us all feeling that badly about you? That's, when I went through that in the early 70s, one particular incident, I was working as an assistant engineer in a 42-story building in Manhattan. I was on the roof with a parapet wall that's maybe 3 feet high. I was sitting on the parapet wall, straddling the wall, looking down 42 stories, ready to let it go, because I was so frustrated. Everything was going wrong in my life. And the next thought I had was, you don't remove yourself from the problems. You remove the problems from you. And I slipped back over the wall. And I've had my weak moments over the years since then. But that concept of remove the problems from you. You can't remove, you're going suicidal. You're not removing any kind of a problem. You're making an even bigger one. You're going to give your mom, your dad, your grandparents, brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, blah, 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 girlfriend, wife, your own children. Is this the legacy you want to leave? And that answer should be no. I'm not a qualified psychologist by any stretch of the imagination. I've been through a bazillion hours of intense therapy to get to this point, and some days are better than others. PTSD is sneaky and insidious. You get traumatized, you're going along with your life, you're in the military, you come out, you're trying to get your life jump-started again. A wife, maybe a kid or two, you're gone to some vocational school for education to be whatever you want to be, that kind of thing. And then somewhere in your 40s, it jumps up and bites you in the butt, hard, and you don't know why, because there's too much of a disconnect between the causal factor of your wartime experience and 20 plus years later. That's the part nobody talks about. It's that little gap in there. That's the deadly one.
Yeah, I mean,
That one showed up for me. It absolutely destroyed my entire life. I ended up divorced. Although I ended up with the kid, which I was okay and willing to give up anything for. That was the best decision of my life. But to young people, hey guys, girls, stand tall and talented. Don't give up. You can't quit. Doesn't work that way.
yeah, and you're talking about that causal disconnect. It's easier if you come home and then you're having these to cope with this and to work through this. You can connect that right to that experience you just came home from. But when it pops up 20, 30 years later, you're not automatically going to think, oh, I bet this is because of Vietnam, and it does.
Exactly. They talk about World War II combat vets in 4 years in whatever theater they were in, averaged about 44 to 50 days of combat in 4 years. Average Vietnam vet, 250 days out of a year. I'm not trying to take anything away from a World War II vet. Their fighting was vicious, brutal, savage. It had to be. What kind of world we were going to have was resting squarely on their shoulders. That's an intense amount of pressure. I didn't feel like we were fighting to protect the citizens of this country at that time. It was to give South Vietnam its freedom to be a country and live their own and not be swallowed up by communists.
Yeah, and I mean that's the advent of the helicopter. You guys, there's a lot of repositioning in World War II when you're talking about moving across the entire country of France.
They had to walk.
Yeah,
they walked across country. We
yeah,
flew everywhere. Yeah. Instant reaction. The Blues could go from sitting around, lounging around during the day and scramble and be airborne in less than 5 minutes and be on site 20, 30 minutes later. We're close enough to it to start dealing with it. From a hunter killer team's perspective, particularly the hunter perspective, that's a very comforting thought to know they're ready to drop whatever they're doing and run. When the scramble horn goes off, it's all hands on deck. You don't know what's happened. You just know it's bad. Get out there. Which they would come for me. I'm going to come for them. I forgot what reunion it was. Maybe it was Tahoe. The Blues showed up. About a dozen of them. And they're all wearing blue scarves. So I knew right away who they were. And I just walked over, introduced myself. And as soon as I said I was a Torp, they were like bowing down. It was like, stop. This is embarrassing. What's up? He goes, you don't know what it's like to have your face in the mud and hear the whine of that little helicopter because you guys were psychos. You would fight under any circumstances to try to get us back out of there. There's no way to pay that back. Yeah, really? So the times I got shot down and you bailed my butt out of the jungle, it's reciprocal. It's a two-way street was where that conversation ended up.
Craig told us.
Never experienced what it's like on the ground when you're trapped in an ambush and you don't dare lift a finger, never mind your face, and try to take a pot shot with an M16 or an M60 or M79, whatever you're playing with at the moment, and hear that little loaches have a very distinctive kind of whiny sound to them. You know what it is. Sounds like a bumblebee on speed. Just that kind of a sound, but it's distinctive.
Yeah,
I saw that point right away, and it was perfectly logical to me. And we'd had an Albuquerque reunion. I know there'd be some of them there. They are welcome. They always will be welcome. They are part of the troop. It's not like VHPA, Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association, made itself exclusive to pilots. And I told them to go do something anatomically impossible when they wanted me to pay dues, but I wasn't welcome. It's like, are you serious? No. And it took a lot of years. And at the point, it was almost too late. I'm not sure how many years ago, but it can't be more than 15 or 20. And their contributors, their members are dwindling. Pretty much all the World War II guys are gone. Most of the Korean guys are going to be gone. The Vietnam era is up next. We're the next big batch of funerals that's coming down the road. I'm one of the youngest. I think out of the whole troop, we figured out there's me and another guy, and he was born in June, I was born in April, that were literally just turned 18 and in country. So when I look at, some of the other guys at the reunions, especially the last one, and realize the numbers are dwindling badly. We only had 60 or 61 in KC. And Ron Livingston and I did not miss that. We caught that right away. And that's where the conversation started. Should we be going to yearlies? Can the guys afford it? Can they handle the stress of the traveling? These aren't young spring chickens. What's in their heart and the desire? Unquestioned. Gonna shout over doubt. Ron Livingston has been doing Zoom meetings with the troop.
Yep.
And I tried to join one last week, and because the camera problem wasn't resolving itself, they couldn't see me, but I could see them and I could hear them. Ron has decided to go to the administrator level and get the subscription to Zoom, and he's going to run it from there. We'll probably have a meeting, I think at the end of the month. He talked about maybe the 1st or 2nd of November, somewhere in there. And I saw a couple of the guys that were online, and it was glad to see them. Virgil was there. I mean, it was just really good. These are guys I've had, Ron and I have had, and Virgil have had intense conversations about aviation. I've been an A&P mechanic most of my life. And I've had a pilot's license and I fly. I speak the language and can go back and forth. And they're not heated conversations, they're fun conversations because we get to explore our own accumulated knowledge and in various fields. And that part is kind of fun. And you kind of miss that. That's one of the things with this. This isn't a pandemic, this is a plandemic. I probably shouldn't have said that.
I didn't.
Feel free to edit it out if you want.
Well, I sat in on the September Zoom reunion. Just wanted to kind of give an update on where the movie's at and talk about the podcast. And it was fun to be on, although at one point, we're talking, I added to the conversation, and someone who hadn't been on the reunions or met me before was like, whoa, who was that? You look very well preserved for a Vietnam veteran. And, General Funk explained it, but I said, hey, if you know how many injuries and surgeries I've had, I'm not very well preserved. Between sports and law enforcement, there's a lot of injuries in there.
The name you just dropped. Officers come in one of two categories. They're either commanders or they're leaders. When they're commanders, they give orders and expect them to be obeyed. But when you give an order like that, that's all they're going to do. When you lead men, they'll follow you into hell and probably drag you back out. He was a leader par excellence. He undoubtedly the best commanding officer in history. He used to fly with us. He would get out. I don't remember him flying in Loaches, but I know he would take Cobras because I went out with him in Cobras. He is much beloved. Ron Livingston and I were talking about doing something for him, acknowledging, what he means to us. To have somebody like that who had your back all the time and understood the insanity of what we were doing on a day-to-day basis. And no, we can't do regular Army. No, you're not going to polish your boots, shave. If I had water, I drank it. I wasn't about to waste shaving with it. I dried toothpaste and a toothbrush dry. Yeah. You want your kids to figure out what we were doing a little bit? Give them toothpaste with no water and nothing to rinse it out with. You just got to put up with it. I went to I think this is the last year, they did a commemorative 10-year of the Vietnam War in the state of Arizona. It was well funded, well done. And General, oh God, I can't think of his name. He was going to be the keynote speaker. And I was at the bar, and this little short guy, hey, you mind if I cut in front of you? I am a New York wise ass. And I was about to smart off. And it was just something about him that, would you be the keynote speaker, General? Yeah, yes, sir, go right ahead. And I asked him if he knew General Funk, and he looked at me, he goes, are you one of those crazy A troopers? And I said, yeah. He goes, that's all he ever talks about is that time in A troop. The guy had a 40-year career, or 30-plus year in the career, military career. He was a 3-star general. His son just got his 2nd star. I mean, talk about family legacy.
4th star. He now outranks his dad. He's a 4
He's
star.
already got the 4th?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Wow. Well, that's a JSOC guy coming up, that's for sure. If he's not already. That's amazing. Well, that just took me aback for a minute. I knew he had 2. I didn't hear about 3. Now you're telling me it's 4. That's meteoric.
Well, he was the commanding general at Fort Hood, as his father was, and now is his 4th. So I was talking to General Funk a couple months ago, and I was like, "Hey, they want to rename all these bases. I'm waiting for Fort Funk. It doesn't roll off the tongue as well."
Right.
But, and he's like, "No, I will never." He's the type of guy. Every time we see him, he asked me to take him out of the movie a bit more because it's not about the generals, it's about the troops. And I was like, well,
and when I see him, I keep calling him General, and he keeps saying to me, "Mike, it's Paul." And I look at him and I said, "Paul, maybe we're proud, and maybe we feel like it's an honor to call you General. I mean, you're a commanding officer. You're a captain." He'll never admit to this, but there's pictures of it. All he ever walked around the compound with was a flak jacket on, no shirt, and on the back it said, "If you ain't Cav, you ain't spit." Yep. Substitute another letter for the P.
Yeah, we're gonna need those pictures.
Yeah, I'm gonna need that photo, Lentino. Come on, man.
We got our email.
Okay, we'll dig it up. Yeah, there's somebody got him from behind. I've seen it. Because his head is turned to one side, and it's very definitely Captain Funk.
Oh, that is fantastic.
First time we met him, and I've still got, it's hard for me not to say sir from all my time in law enforcement. First time we met him, I said, "Hey, thanks for meeting with us, sir." And he said, "Call me Paul." And I just immediately said, "Yes, sir." Paul, sorry, sir. And yeah.
We fell into a little pattern at the reunions, especially since I've been going. I get up pretty early, and I want coffee, and I want it now, and don't mess with me. Well, General Funk, Andy Anderson, I'm sure you guys know him, a couple of the other door gunners, Ted Courier, myself, we got in the habit of having coffee at like 5:36 in the morning, and I couldn't tell you how much I treasured those moments with those guys.
Is it legal to be up at that time in the morning? No.
Oh yeah, we were up. Prowling around. You already drank the coffee in the hotel room. Now you're down there bugging the restaurant. It got in Albuquerque. We had one guy who worked in the kitchen coming in early to make sure we could get coffee. He was well taken care of. We're sitting around one day just BSing about all kinds of stuff. It's early in the morning, very quiet, real special time of the day. And something came up about personalities. And Andy turns and looks at me and he goes, "You never were really good at taking orders." And I said to him, "I always acknowledge the orders, but if a captain asks me to do something, I'm going to tell him that a major told me to do something else, and I'm going to go do what I want." A lieutenant gets a captain gets a major that's a colonel. That's as far as I can go. There ain't no generals running around out here. Even I was smart enough to understand that. It was just those moments where the fences are down with just a bunch of guys sitting around drinking some coffee in the morning and enjoying each other's company. You got a 3-star general, a major, and a bunch of funky door gunners. Ted and Gene Ficker would show up once in a while. Oh my God, my memory's going, guys. I got a big time case of CRS. I couldn't tell you what I had for breakfast, but I remember my phone number from when I was 9 years old. So that kind of nonsense. Short-term memory is rapidly going bye-bye.
I know the same thing. I've still got my lunch plate over there, so I can tell you that. But so
I got invited by Jim Kurtz, who's kind of our historian, secretary, coordinator. Everything goes through him. I think it's at Walter Reed. They're going to restart a program that was very effective in the past and got discontinued. Building plastic models, which I've been doing since I was a little boy. I've probably built 20 or 30 models for guys in the troop because I do it accurate. If that's the tail number, that's the tail number. However it was marked, whatever model it was, I'm pretty much of a fanatic for accuracy. And when this program started up, it was a lieutenant colonel retired, Special Forces, who's spearheading it. He asked me to join, and I said, yes, I can't wait. This is the younger generation of vets. I can't wait to get at them because it's supposedly going to be more or less a one-on-one thing on Zoom like we're doing now. That'll give somebody a little time to get comfortable, get their guard down a little bit, and get into the nitty-gritty, and let's see what we're dealing with. Because if you're in a program like that, you are a combat vet and you've been diagnosed with PTSD. So yeah, we got a few things in common we can talk about. It's not a 20th century, 21st century, 19th century, 18th century thing. It is here. It's alive and present, and how are you going to deal with it? What are you going to do? How do you cope with this? I can tell you what I've done. I can't tell anybody what to do. I can tell you what worked for me. And if that gives somebody a step in the right path, and then they develop their own plans and techniques and strategies, that's one life I can say. Can I save one life? Give me one more chance to save a life.
Well, and
That's all.
we've had that talk while making the movie of, leave the world a bit better place than you found it. And I my opinion is that too many people think that has to be a grand gesture. It has to be, oh, I cured cancer, I left the world a better place. If you can change the trajectory of one person's life, you've left the world a better place. Like that's.
I have a long established custom of some stranger will walk by me. If it's a female, hey, you look really nice today. I don't know what's going on in her mind. And with some people, that one little couple of words of kindness can change the trajectory of that day. And you never know what's the long-term ramifications there. I've seen guys walking in circles, really struggling. Sir, you okay? Is there anything I can do to help? Just hearing it from a total stranger, I don't know what's going to happen from there. I really don't.
Yeah, but it's the small things.
It's the
People.
little stuff. Being kind is free. Being polite is free. It doesn't cost you anything. And you never know what you're going to get paid back. I don't even look for payback. Pay it forward. Helping somebody broken down on the side of the road. Man, that's me.
Yeah. Yeah. And
seeing a highway patrolman out there changing the spare tire. Get your ass back out on patrol. I got this. Here's my driver's license. Take a picture of it.
yeah,
I got this.
a simple text. How you doing? A simple text to your veteran buddy.
Don't know.
Dustin, you got anything to add here before we?
Thanks for joining us, Mike. This is really a pleasure to talk to you, as always.
I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yeah, and hopefully we have another reunion here.
We're looking at 2021 in Albuquerque.
Nice.
Back to Ron and Becky's house. And for the Albuquerque reunions, Albuquerque is only about a 7-hour drive for me. So for each one, I've driven up there like a month or so prior and just coordinated some stuff with Ron just to help take the workload off a little bit. It's a tremendous amount of work to do it. The ladies, Pam and Pick, who did it the last couple of reunions, it is worse than herding cats. We are notorious for putting things off until the last minute. And they're trying to get hotel counts, how many people are going to be at the big banquet, and here's somebody paying at the last minute, of which guilty is charged. I mean, I'll get the hotel reservation. And for the last reunion, I swore up and down I sent the check. And Pam is like the school mom. She doesn't take no lip from anyone. I love that. That's Ron Black's wife. Ron and I have an incredibly good relationship. Facebook lets us all fortunately stay in contact, and just seeing somebody like the post that's up there, it's like that name is in my face. And it's at the point where it's not the Vietnam nonsense that happened that I remember about him. It's what we've done since. And that to me is extremely important.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought Pam was going to strangle me at the last reunion. When I was like, hey, in a good-natured way. But
Pam wanted to strangle me in several meetings.
Yeah, I was like, hey, we'll show the movie, and the schedule's already getting set. And then I'm like, can we have a room to show the movie to the core guys first? Like, I don't want to have Ed Beal watch this in front of everyone for the first time, and just kind of. And I realized I was like, if it doesn't work, that's.
Ed and I have talked about making that movie and how tough it really was. I mean, you can see it on the movie. You did a very good job portraying that, but to not do it that way to not do it in that intense way wouldn't be true to the story. The story is a story. Truth is truth. Reality is reality. It had to be done. And yes, it was tough, what they were going through, watching the movie and reliving that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm gonna unfortunately have to sign out here because I can't get out in my nice shirt for the podcast. Although I already have my workout shorts on. But thank you so much for joining us, Mike. Always great to talk.
You're welcome, dude.
We'll look forward to that picture of General Funk.
I'm gonna have to round that one up. I know I've seen it.
All right,
I'll do a digging around and see what I can come up with.
We'll find it.
Oh no, that's got to be there. We got
yeah.
that.
Now that we know that exists, that has to. That's going in.
That is him, suits him to a T. But that's how he led us. He had this confident aura about him. You get your rules of engagements read to you sometimes, and then he goes, "Do what you got to do to get home." Aye. Got that. We hear that loud and clear. Shoot first, ask questions later.
Yeah, your rule is survive.
Pretty much. Do what you got to do to come home tonight.
But for the audience, thank you so much for tuning in again for our 17th episode. Make sure you give us if you like what you heard, and I hope you did, give us a like and a subscribe on wherever you're listening to us on the podcast sphere.
They show up in Facebook.
We do. We are on Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, Podbean, but it all collates to the same spot, and we do post it on Facebook on the Know Your Story podcast on Facebook, as well as the Apache Blues film page on Facebook as well. So yeah, give us likes.
Before we go, can I read a very short poem? This just says it all. I got to get up and go get it, so you'll have some time to edit. You guys ready?
Absolutely.
I did not write this poem. I don't know who did, but this says it clearly. For them, it was the news. For us, it was reality. They watched construction. We performed destruction. They watched kids play. We watched them die. They learned of life. We learned of death. Their passion was to succeed. Ours was to survive. They served dinner. We served our country. They forgot. We cannot.
That is succinct to the point and beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
I'm not the author, but I think this needs to go in the cast.
Exactly.
Yeah, my eyes are going in the wrong place again. There we go. Back to it again. I think I've been pretty good about staying in the camera.
You have been.
You did great. You did great.
I flicked out a few times, but
not even noticeable. You did great.
You've been listening to the Know Their Story podcast. If you made it this far, we must be doing something right. Let us know by subscribing to our channel.
And think about sitting down with the veterans in your life, because saying thank you for your service should be the beginning of the conversation, not the end.